Hey everyone, and welcome back to Citywide Bytes. Well, my next guest is a very familiar face. We last had her on the show back in October to talk about her new release, The Others. And just 4 months later, she is back to talk about her new book, The Gift, out on March 18th. Evette Davis joins us. Evette, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Wait, I brought a copy of my book just in case people want to
I
know.
love that cover.
It
That
is
is such a cool cover.
This cover has a picture. It's called the Dragon Bridge, and it is a picture of a bridge in Ljubljana, Slovenia, which is one of the places where this book takes place. We're going overseas with Olivia in book two.
All right. I want to go to this place now because any place that calls their bridge the Dragon Bridge is
Right?
awesome right off the
Oh,
bat.
yeah, I agree with you. Writers don't get very much latitude with the covers of their books, but I remembered this bridge because I actually traveled to the city. I had a desire to I have an interest in Eastern and Central Europe, probably because of my Jewish heritage. And so I had in my mind, because some of the villains in the first book are from Serbia. I had in my mind that I would like get my entire family to go to Serbia and we would like do some reconnaissance. So we flew to Belgrade in the winter. Keep in mind, Belgrade is a former Eastern Bloc country. So when you get off the plane there, like everything's in Cyrillic. So I convinced my daughter and my husband to rent an Airbnb apartment in Belgrade in the winter, which was cold. We started in Ljubljana and spent Christmas Eve there. And it's resplendent and beautiful. They have a lot of beautiful traditions in Europe. And then we flew to Belgrade and then we went on to Lake Bled. So the entire book actually was a vacation, but I turned it into like a supernatural, sort of exercise. But that bridge is the gateway to this castle on a hill. And it's just the kind of thing that you can really never forget because it's just so beautiful and it's stuck in my mind. And so when they were sending me choices, you usually get a couple choices from your publisher of what you want your book to say. I sent them a photo and I said, would you consider using this? And I was fortunate that they said, yeah, okay, the Dragon Bridge. You can have it. So
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Write this down. Dragon Bridge, Slovenia. Go in there. Checking this place out. And the fact that it leads to a castle, of course it does. It
oh,
would
sure.
have to do this.
Right. We don't
Absolutely.
have a lot of castles in the United States because he obviously didn't have a monarchy.
Yeah, we didn't have their kind of history.
That's right. The whole reason that we don't have a monarchy is because of Europe, right? But there's a benefit for tourism because these buildings are magnificent and they're
Oh
smooth.
yeah. And
I think that one I took a funicular up because it's so high up on a mountain for obvious defense and tactical reasons. So,
yeah. It's funny too, because when you think about some of these castles, some of them predate this country as a whole. They're older than the nation. It's
that's right.
wild to think that a structure is actually still standing, number one, but it's actually older than this country. It's wild to think about the history difference.
Yeah, well, and that's why vampires are also such great characters for me to use in novels because they're so old. And if you want to have a lesson about history and you don't want to beat somebody over the head with it, right? A vampire is a really useful tool because it's like, well, I've been living for 1,000 years. Let me just tell you what I think
Yeah,
about.
exactly. Sit down, kids. Let me tell you all about the Black Plague. It was a wild time,
That's
but
right.
now that we're I think we're going to segue from like benefiting the tourism of Slovenia to talking about your new book, The Gift, out in just a little bit, March 18th. Now, this one picks up, sounds like not too far after the last one ended off. We have your main character, Olivia Shepherd, whom I recall not being the most eager heroine out there. She was gifted these powers of empathy and thinking, I don't want to do this actually. How has she changed from book one to book two?
Wow. Well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but let's just say that she's in the middle of her journey. So
Yeah.
the book ends with a cliffhanger. I think we can talk about it now because we're past book one, we're into book two. The end of book one, she finds out that her father is a powerful witch and that her mother and this man, Gabriel, have been lying to her and not telling her. And that sets her off and she takes off and leaves. And she tells William and Joseph, I want to get out of town. Like, I'm sick of these people. I don't want to deal with this. And so the second book opens with her sort of not on the run, but kind of just hiding out. and she does have this enemy in Nicolas, this vampire. And so the book opens with a terrible shock to her system, which I can't reveal because it's a really important part of the plot. But it sets her off on another one of these ill-fated kind of journeys where she's going to have 2 steps forward and 2 steps backwards, right? In her emotional and her sort of magical journey. And the thing that's different about this book is that it's going to put her in close proximity for the majority of the time with Joseph, William's brother by vampire blood. And it's going to set up a kind of a love triangle, quite frankly, that is interesting and brings a good deal of tension to the story. So, and they all get sent overseas through a series of machinations of the council. And so the majority of this book will take place in Paris and then Serbia, and then eventually they'll come home. But there's a lot of reckoning that happens in book 2.
Ooh, I love a good reckoning. It's
Yeah.
really it's really awesome. So there's so much to unpack here. So let's first talk about the council. So the book opens with this brutal act of terrorism that hits the council, and this is what sends Olivia on her like Eastern European jaunt.
Right.
What is this thing? What happens to the council that Olivia is the one dispatched?
So at the end of book 2, or the end of book 1, there's a very big dinner to celebrate the election wins of the council. It's held at a museum inside Golden Gate Park. And just as they're leaving the building, a series of private cars, limousines pull up, and somebody opens the door, and it sets off a ginormous explosion. And pretty much everybody is either killed or injured. And it like takes off the front of the San Francisco Academy of Sciences. My sincere apologies to the museum.
Whoops.
I really do think one day, if I'm lucky enough, it would make a fabulous scene in a movie, Max. I'm serious, like, and Gabrielle, the head of the council, and a bunch of other people, they use magic to sort of clean it up and get rid of all the evidence, but it sends them off to figure out who did this, and they're all convinced that Nicola has done it. And so they leave to go to Europe anyway to kind of get out of his sphere of influence. And while they're there, Olivia's mother is there. This whole revelation about her family happens, and then another terrible tragedy takes place, which sets the second book in motion, which I really don't want to give away, but it forces the council to reconcile with the fact that Nicola wants to take it over. He wants to challenge Gabriel for his authority, and it sets up a series of decisions about how are they going to fix this. And there's a front-facing solution, which is they're going to send Olivia to Europe and have her look for evidence against Nicola by pretending to be an election monitor, which I don't know if a lot of people know what an election monitor is. I happen to know because I worked for the United States government. I worked for a member of Congress. I have a background in politics and journalism. And I've always been fascinated by people who, in the United States, mostly, our elections are peaceful things. In other countries, that's changing a little, but it's nothing compared to other countries where people really have a hard time. So there's an entire, bureaucratic organization, which may or may not last any longer, that would go out and monitor elections. So we put Olivia into that, and that gave her the ability to travel all through Europe, sort of spying on vampires and gathering information about them. And it sets up the drama of the entire book. And I also think it gives people a window into an unfamiliar landscape. I'm willing to bet that most people in their lifetime will not travel to Belgrade, Serbia. I'm just guessing. Hungary, yes, maybe, like Budapest is sort of like but Hungary, probably not. So it's a fun way to sort of give people a window into a country which is actually quite beautiful, but wouldn't necessarily be on your like tourism palette. And then there are other, places in between. There's an old monastery in Slovenia up in the mountains called like Bled, Bled. It's a monastery that's set in the middle of a lake. It's also a castle, Max. I'll give you a list of 5 castles in Eastern Europe you can visit if you want to.
Sold.
There's a lot of fabulous locales. There's a lot of very serious, dangerous things. There's a pack of werewolves that are trailing and following everybody. There's some significant violence, a lot of sword play, as Olivia figures out how to be a very strong leader. But it gets under her skin, this notion now of, well, what am I? all my life I thought I was this, and now I'm this. What is that? What does that mean? And I will say that the book opens with Olivia sitting in the middle of Montenegro having a tarot card reader tell her fortune. So the opening chapter is somebody telling her fortune through the story of these tarot cards, which I don't know if you're familiar with tarot cards, but they're beautiful cards that have different suits and different people, and they purport to tell your fortune. So this woman is reading out loud saying, oh my gosh, you've got a terrible enemy. You better be careful. And Olivia is saying, don't I know it?
Oh yeah, I know what that guy. Don't worry about it.
Right.
It's probably, yeah, this all tracks. I get that.
Right.
Um, I want to ask about Olivia and the notion of destiny versus choice, because that does seem to be a pretty big theme here. You have Olivia in this sort of chosen one role that she does not choose at all.
Right.
How does she? I guess I'm wondering, how does she handle the notion of being chosen for something that she does not want a part of, and how does she kind of fight against that?
Well, as you know, she doesn't handle it very well on some days, and on other
Nope.
days, she's okay with it. I mean, I think she's chafing at wanting her old life back and also being thrust into the situation. And then because she's so impetuous and because she's, you know, I think the term that I like to use for Olivia is that she's an unreliable narrator, right? Like she's saying one thing, but she's doing another. And sometimes, even review readers will be like, Olivia frustrates me. Like I understand. She's destiny and fate. Don't we all at some point have moments in our lives where something happens and you say to yourself, I feel like I couldn't avoid this. I feel like it was
Mhm.
inevitable. That does happen even if you don't want to put such a lofty title to it. And so I think what she's struggling with is, she's born with this gift. She can't escape it any more than like a retriever can hide their interest in a duck, right? So this is the internal drama that I hope is happening in this book is I am these things. And the kicker is that she is apparently the child of this prophecy, this witch who can speak to the dead, who can hear the thoughts of vampires, and it sort of preordains that she's going to be the leader of this organization. And book 3 is done. It's been sent to the publisher. It'll be out in September, and you'll see her finish this arc and how she comes to it. But in the middle, I don't know. I mean, I do believe in fate a little, or destiny, just because so often things happen to me where I'm like, yeah, I didn't see this coming, but now that it's happened, I feel like it was meant to be, or I feel like this is supposed to be happening. The question is, I think, I don't know, do you trust your instincts? Do you have a sixth sense? How in tune are you to what's going on? And some people would say that's a bunch of rubbish. I happen to be somebody who thinks that there is something to that. I wouldn't let it guide me totally, but so what Olivia is doing is learning how to trust her instincts, even when it's uncomfortable to know the truth. I think
I
that's
like that.
something that everybody can relate to. And think about anything you've ever done where you've had to go from not being good at it to being good at it. That journey, whether it's becoming a witch or a baseball player or a movie critic, whatever it is, like we all have that arc in our lives. And I think people can relate to that transformation of going from what you were to what you will be, or to being a better version of yourself. That's what I'm trying to write about for her, even though it involves like werewolves and swords, and she gets kidnapped at one point in the book, and
Boy, she
yeah,
cannot catch a break.
it gets worse and worse and worse as the books go on, unfortunately. So
Oh,
nothing really
jeez.
egregious, or you know nothing
Well,
too
like,
much.
book two definitely sounds like it's got a lot in store for our good friend Olivia. In fact, one of the things that I read was that, in addition to everything else, her parents have been keeping secrets.
Yeah.
Now, this can be a spoiler. We can, skip over it, but can we talk a little bit about what she kind of learns from her folks?
Well, I mean, her mom knew that so her India and Olivia are at odds with each other their whole lives, because India uses her empathic powers. She feels everything, and she has very serious, substance abuse problems. And so Olivia is always sort of not only looked upon her mom as sort of just like a kind of a mess, but doesn't want to be part of that. And so she subverts her empathy, and then realizes in the first book she can't do that, otherwise she's going to, be harmed. And then but she doesn't know who her parents are, and her mom has never spoken of it. It's like that person's just not in your life anymore. And so she gets to Paris at the end of book 1, and her mother actually thinks she's about to become her father's lover, because she's talked about this man Gabriel. She's traveling with him, he's taking her to Paris, and at the end of book 1 they're all supposed to meet for a drink, and Olivia said, Mom, I want you to meet my boyfriend. And the mother thinks it's Gabriel, not William. And that's how the secret breaks out at the end of book 1. And instead of sticking around to say, why didn't you guys tell me? She gets mad and leaves. So it's not until she gets into book 2, when she's alone with her father, finally, she says, why did you keep this secret from you? And he didn't know. He didn't know that this was going on. Olivia's mother had hidden her existence from the father and had hidden the father's existence from her. And this is a big issue, because she sort of has to grapple with, who am I? I had no father, now I have a father. And then she has to deal with the repercussions of her mother and what that means. And this issue of being a child and your parents and that relationship is something that will carry through all the way to the last book, because of their relationship, and because Gabriel is a character that wants to manage everybody, either for his own design or for what he thinks is the greater good. And that's something Olivia really chafes under. She's not quite sure whether he loves her or whether he needs her for his plans.
Wow.
That's hard, right?
Yeah, it is. It's very hard. Let's talk about, of course, you can't have your heroine without your villain. And of course, this would be a Nicola, I'm assuming here. He's the 1,000-year-old vampire after her.
You have to pronounce it Nicola.
Nicolas. I'll get it eventually, I
In
swear.
Nosferatu, we all have to have like somewhat quasi-Romanian accents. So let's
Fair enough. What goes into crafting this character, and how do you sort of avoid any kind of villainous tropes?
Yeah, that's hard. I think there are villainous tropes. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I think that there just are, and I think you have to use them. And one of the things I think that I excel at is kind of snappy dialogue.
Nice.
And I like the banter between Olivia and her villain. They have a kind of begrudging respect for each other, because Nicola has lived a long time. He is a Serbian hotelier, sort of developer by day, obviously a vampire by night. Haha. Very successful millionaire. And I modeled him after all of the kinds of oligarchs that you see in Eastern Europe. I did a lot of reading about members of the Serbian mafia and others. I read Interpol, police warrants, so he isn't a total part of my imagination. There's a lot of the crimes that they commit, all the things they do are actually things I saw in Interpol reports and warrants for his arrest. But when you give somebody 1,000-year-old heritage, you can have a lot of fun with them. So making up his backstory of how he became a vampire was great, but there's a grudging respect between the two of them, which I think keeps him from being too much of a cliche. But he is in fact a domineering vampire set on taking over an organization and making humans subservient. I didn't make that up. So I am borrowing from the greatest traditions of Dracula and Nosferatu and everything, but I think I gave him a little bit of a twist by just making him, somebody who meddles in elections, and he has this criminal empire also where he's a drug runner and a sex trafficker. I mean, he's really a bad person, and he runs a criminal ring in Eastern Europe. And William, is a part of this. He gets sent off to investigate his criminal dealings separately, and they don't tell Olivia. So the tension of this book is that Olivia is waiting for William to show up in Europe. He's not coming. He's undercover, and Joseph is with her. And that's all I'm saying about the whole plot. But it sets up these remarkable, delicious sorts of longings and absences which have to be accounted for. And it also puts people in proximity with each other who have no business being with each other. And even Olivia and Nicholas spend some time alone having frank conversations in some somewhat dramatic ways. And the dialogue and the exchanges between them all, you start to see Olivia kind of ratchet up her courage and her moxie as she realizes, oh yeah, I am the daughter of this man. I am the daughter of this family. I am really a witch. So even if she starts to have the street cred, she still is missing the power.
Ah, okay.
And
All right.
yeah,
Well, to wrap this up, of course, this is not the end of the story. You have the next book, The Campaign, coming out later this year. Uh, do we have a release date, and can we get at least a little idea, just a little bit of hint as to what lies in store with this new book?
sure. I have the cover for the third book. If you want me to share my screen, I can show it to you.
Yeah, yeah, let's see it. Let's see if this will.
Let's see, get that up so I can share it with you. I think you have to give me permission.
Uh-oh. I Okay. Well, you know what, folks? We will just have to share that one later.
Sure, I'll
Um,
show it to you. So book 3 is about Olivia. Olivia meets somebody in the middle, in the second book, who wants to run for president of the United States, and she provides critical information to Olivia and says, I'm gonna ask a favor of you. And in the third book opens with that request that she come and help her run her campaign to run for president, but for the supernatural part of it. And so trying to get a woman elected president, it turns out, almost tears a hole in the universe between darkness and light. And it brings the return of her first nemesis in book 1, also Stoner Halbert, this evil political consultant who, went in league with the demon to try to put her out of business. So she's going to go head to head with Stoner and try to elect a woman president. And she's going to travel across the United States, and there's going to be a big showdown.
I love it. I love it. Well, folks, we have given you so much to chew on. The only thing to do is go to EvetteDavis.com, get your copy of the first book, The Others. The gift's coming out on March 18th. You can pre-order it, buy it at your local bookstore, however you want to do it. Make sure it happens. And of course, leave reviews, follow the socials, make comments. This helps everyone out. And Evette, definitely looking forward to talking to you again very soon for the campaign.
Thank you. Max, may I just say one more thing, which is I am putting together a street team of people who you can sign up through my website, and people who will agree to be a part of that and do these reviews and social media. I have a whole series of cute gifts and interesting things to provide, tote bags and tarot cards and candles. So if you're interested, email me and I'll sign you up.
Nice. I love that. Well, folks, this has been Citywide Bytes. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.